What would you do if the person you loved most publicly humiliated you in front of their entire family on Christmas? Would you yell? Would you cry? This man did something else. He smiled, walked away, and by the next morning, their whole world came crashing down. And the crazy part? They had no idea he had that kind of power. Welcome to Voice of Granny. While you are here, please hit the subscribe button and comment your view on the story and where you're watching from. You know, there are moments in life that split your world in two. Moments where everything you thought was real just shatters. For Michael Bennett, that moment came on Christmas Day, surrounded by twinkling lights and the sound of champagne glasses clinking together. Let me take you back to that night in Chicago. The Anderson family home was decorated like something out of a magazine. Red and gold ornaments hung from a massive tree in the corner. The fireplace crackled with warmth. Everything looked perfect on the outside. But sometimes the prettiest pictures hide the ugliest truths. Michael sat at the dinner table, watching his wife Jessica move around the room in her red dress. She looked beautiful, he thought. She always did. They'd been married for 5 years, and he still remembered the day they met like it was yesterday. She'd been a waitress at a little diner downtown. He was just a guy in a suit who happened to stop by for coffee. She spilled a whole tray of drinks on him by accident, and while she panicked and apologized, he just laughed it off. It's just a suit, he'd told her. You're working hard. Don't worry about it. That small moment of kindness turned into late-night conversations, then dates at cheap restaurants, and finally a simple wedding in her parents' backyard. Nothing fancy. Just love, or so he thought. Michael never told Jessica who he really was. See, his father had built Bennett Industries from the ground up, a company worth billions. When his dad passed away, Michael inherited everything. But he also learned a hard lesson. Money changes people. He watched his father's so-called friends steal from the company at his funeral. Partners who cried crocodile tears while emptying bank accounts. So Michael made a choice. He decided to live simply. Drive a regular car. Wear regular clothes. Work a regular job in construction. He wanted to find someone who would love him for who he was, not what he had. He thought Jessica was that person. He was wrong. Tonight, as Christmas music played softly in the background, Jessica's family gathered around. Her father, Robert, poured expensive wine. Her mother, Patricia, fussed over the dinner table. Her brother Jake and sister Emily laughed at some inside joke. Everything seemed normal until Jessica stood up and tapped her glass with a spoon. "Everyone," she called out, her voice cutting through the holiday cheer. "I have an announcement to make." The room went quiet. All eyes turned to her. Michael felt a strange knot form in his stomach. Jessica's smile was cold, sharp, like broken glass. "I'm happy to tell you all that I'm divorcing this loser I married." For a second, nobody moved. Then the room exploded. Cheers. Actual cheers. Her mother jumped up and hugged her. Her father raised his glass high. Jake and Emily clapped like they were at a sports game. The sound of their celebration filled the room, loud and cruel. Finally, Patricia shouted, hugging her daughter tight. "I never understood why you married him in the first place, honey. You deserve so much better than this nobody." Robert nodded, his face red with wine and satisfaction. "You're free now, Jessica. Free to actually live the life you were meant to have." Michael sat perfectly still. He didn't yell. He didn't cry. He just stared at his wine glass, his face calm in a way that felt almost scary. Jessica turned to him, feeding off the attention like oxygen. "My boss has been asking me to marry him for months," she announced proudly. "David Richards. He treats me like a queen. Takes me to fancy restaurants. Buys me gifts. Once this divorce is final, I can finally have the life I actually deserve." More laughter. More clapping. Jake leaned back in his chair, smirking. "Guess Christmas came early for you, sis." Through it all, Michael said nothing. His hand tightened slightly around his glass, but his face never changed. Finally, he looked up at Jessica. Not with anger. Not with sadness. With something else. Something quiet and unreadable. Jessica strutted over and dropped a white envelope on the table in front of him. "Divorce papers. Sign them," she demanded. "I don't need a broke nobody like you holding me back anymore." Michael looked at the envelope for a long moment. Then he looked at her one last time. When he spoke, his voice was low and steady. "Are you absolutely sure this is what you want?" Before Jessica could answer, her family laughed even harder. "Oh, come on, Michael," Patricia said mockingly. "Let the girl live her life. You can't hold on to something that was never really yours." Michael stood up slowly. He buttoned his jacket with careful, deliberate movements. Something shifted in the room. The laughter got a little quieter, a little more uncertain. He picked up the envelope carefully, almost gently. Then he looked at Jessica one final time. "I hope your new life treats you exactly the way you treated me," he said quietly. And with that, he turned and walked toward the door. No shouting. No drama. Just silence. The front door closed softly behind him, and suddenly the room felt different. Colder somehow, despite the fire still burning. Robert chuckled awkwardly, trying to bring back the energy. "Well, that was dramatic." Patricia lifted her glass again, forcing a smile. To Jessica's freedom. They cheered once more, but something had changed. There was an uneasy feeling in the air now, like a shadow creeping across the room. None of them noticed the small smile that had crossed Michael's lips as he walked out into the falling snow. None of them realized they had just celebrated the beginning of their own destruction. Because the man they called a nobody, he was about to show them exactly who he really was. The snow fell quietly on Chicago streets as Michael drove home in his Toyota Camry. Christmas lights reflected off his windshield red, green, gold, like ghosts dancing in the darkness. The heater hummed softly, the only sound in the car besides the gentle whisper of tires on snowy roads. The divorce papers sat on the passenger seat like an uninvited guest. Michael's face was calm, unreadable. The kind of calm that comes right before a storm breaks loose. When he pulled into his driveway, the neighborhood was alive with warmth and laughter spilling from other houses. His house stood dark and quiet. He sat in the car for a moment, engine still running, staring at the porch light Jessica had insisted they install years ago. "It feels welcoming," she'd said back then, smiling as she squeezed his hand. Now it just felt like a lie. He turned off the engine and stepped into the cold night air. Inside, the house still smelled faintly like her perfume, something floral and expensive that she'd started wearing about a year ago. He hung up his coat, placed the envelope on the kitchen table, and poured himself a glass of whiskey. As the liquid burned down his throat, memories started flooding back. He remembered that first night at the diner so clearly. Jessica struggling with 2 heavy trays, apologizing over and over when she spilled red wine all over his expensive suit. Most people would have been angry, but Michael just smiled. He saw someone working hard, trying her best, and that meant something to him. They started talking that night. Then came more talks. Then dates at small Italian restaurants where they shared pasta and dreams. She told him about wanting a simple, honest life. About how she was tired of seeing people chase money and status. About how she just wanted to find someone real. He thought he'd found that someone too. They got married in her parents' backyard under string lights and paper lanterns. Nothing fancy. Just family and close friends. Jessica wore a simple white dress from a local shop, and she looked beautiful. When she said, "I do," Michael believed with his whole heart that she meant forever. He never told her about Bennett Industries. Never told her he was the sole owner of a company worth billions. He lived simply on purpose, working construction jobs, driving a regular car, living in a modest house. He wanted to be loved for who he was, not what he had. His father taught him that lesson the hard way. Michael remembered the day his father died. Cancer had taken him slowly, painfully. At the funeral, so many people showed up. Business partners, investors, friends, or so they claimed. They cried beautiful tears and gave touching speeches. Within a month, Michael discovered that half of them had been stealing from the company, embezzling funds, setting up fake accounts, using his father's death as a cover to rob him blind. That's when Michael learned the truth. Money reveals who people really are. And most people, when they see wealth, see only what they can take. So he decided to hide it all. He stepped back from the public eye, hired trusted managers to run the companies, and became invisible. Just Michael Bennett, a guy who mixed cement and hammered nails for a living. He thought Jessica loved that version of him. The simple man, the honest worker. But then things started changing. About 2 years into their marriage, Jessica got a job as a receptionist at Anderson Real Estate Group. She was excited at first, happy to contribute. But slowly, she started changing. New clothes, new makeup, new friends from work who looked at Michael like he was dirt on their expensive shoes. She started complaining about the house, about the car, about their simple dinners and quiet weekends. "Don't you want more?" she'd ask. "Don't you want to give me more?" Michael would just smile and say, "I want you to be happy." But he wondered if happiness had become something money could buy for her. Then came the moment her father got sick. Really sick. Cancer, just like Michael's dad. The hospital bills piled up fast, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Jessica's family couldn't afford it. They were looking at losing everything. Jessica came home crying one night, collapsed in Michael's arms. "We can't pay for his treatment," she sobbed. "He's going to die because we don't have enough money." Michael held her and said nothing. The next day, he made a single phone call. By morning, the hospital bill was gone. Completely paid. The nurses called it a miracle. An anonymous donor, they said. The Anderson family cried tears of joy and thanked God for the blessing. Jessica never asked questions. She just accepted the miracle. Michael also quietly arranged for her parents to receive 2 credit cards with high limits. Anonymous gifts, the bank told them. Probably from the hospital charity fund. Robert and Patricia used them freely, never wondering where the money came from. When Jake and Emily graduated college and couldn't find jobs, guess who made a phone call to place them in comfortable positions at Bennett Industries? They thought they got hired on merit. They had no idea. Every blessing, every miracle, every lucky break the Anderson family received over the past few years, it all came from the man they laughed at tonight. The man they called a loser. Michael finished his whiskey and set the glass down carefully. He looked at the divorce papers one more time, then pulled out his phone. The fire in the fireplace flickered, casting dancing shadows across his face. He opened his contacts and found a name, James Sullivan, his chief operating officer. It was time for the Anderson family to learn an important lesson. Miracles don't just appear out of nowhere. And when the person giving them walks away, they disappear just as fast. Michael's finger hovered over the call button. He thought about Jessica's face tonight, the cruelty in her smile, the way her family cheered his humiliation like it was entertainment. He thought about all the years he'd spent protecting them, helping them, loving them. And then he thought about the word Jessica used tonight, nobody. His jaw tightened. His eyes went cold. He pressed call. "James," he said quietly when the line picked up. "We need to talk. There are some changes I need to make. Effective immediately." Outside, the snow continued to fall softly on Chicago. Silent, patient, covering everything in white. And inside that quiet house, the man they called a nobody began to dismantle their world, piece by careful piece. Morning came cold and gray. Michael woke up at 6, just like always. He made black coffee, no sugar, no cream, and stood by the kitchen window watching the sun try to break through winter clouds. He hadn't slept much, but he felt clear, focused, like a fog that had been clouding his mind for years had finally lifted. At exactly 8 o'clock, he picked up his phone and made the first call. "James," he said when his COO answered, "I need you to cancel 2 credit cards. They're registered under the Anderson Family Trust account." There was a pause on the other end. "Sir, those are your wife's parents, correct?" "Ex-wife," Michael corrected calmly. "Effective immediately. Block them both." "Understood, Mr. Bennett." Michael hung up and dialed the next number. Human Resources at Bennett Industries. "Good morning, Mr. Bennett," the HR director answered cheerfully. "What can I do for you?" "There's been a restructuring decision," Michael said, his voice flat and businesslike. "I need you to terminate 2 employees in the marketing division. Jake Anderson and Emily Anderson." A brief silence. "Sir, those are your wife's siblings, aren't they?" "Yes." "Handle it discreetly. No explanations necessary. Just standard termination paperwork." "Of course, sir. I'll process it today." Michael ended the call and took another sip of coffee. The liquid was bitter, but it matched his mood perfectly. One more call to make. The important one. He dialed Anderson Real Estate Group, a company he'd quietly purchased 2 years ago through a shell corporation. Jessica had no idea she'd been working for him this whole time. "Anderson Real Estate, Compliance Department," a professional voice answered. "This is Michael Bennett," he said. "I need you to initiate a full audit on your general manager, David Richards. Check all his accounts, transactions, and client dealings from the past 3 years." "Yes, Mr. Bennett." "Should we inform him of the audit?" "No. And while you're at it, terminate the client relations manager. Jessica Anderson. Effective today. No severance package. File it under ethical review." Another pause. Then carefully. "Understood, sir." Michael set his phone down on the table and stared at the divorce papers. He picked up a pen and with one smooth motion, signed his name on the line. His signature was neat, deliberate, final. He whispered to the empty room. "You wanted your freedom, Jessica. Let's see what it costs." Meanwhile, across town, the Anderson house still glowed with leftover Christmas decorations. The family sat around the breakfast table, reliving last night's victory. Jessica smiled over her coffee. "I feel so free," she said. "Like a weight's been lifted." Patricia squeezed her daughter's hand. "You did the right thing, honey. That man was holding you back." Robert nodded, cutting into his pancakes. "David Richards is a much better match. A real man with a real future." Jake laughed. "Can't believe it took you this long, sis. Should have dumped that loser years ago." Emily chimed in, seriously. "What did he ever give you anyway?" Just then, Robert pulled out his wallet to pay for some groceries being delivered. He handed over his credit card with confidence. The delivery guy swiped it once, then twice. His face scrunched up. "Sorry, sir. Card's been declined." Robert blinked. "That's impossible. Try again." The machine beeped. "Declined." Patricia quickly grabbed her purse. "Here, use mine instead." Swipe. Beep. Declined. The happy mood at the table started to crack. "What the hell?" Robert muttered, his face going red. Before anyone could say anything else, Jake's phone buzzed. Then Emily's phone buzzed right after. Both of them looked down at their screens, and the color drained from their faces. "What is it?" Jessica asked, feeling a knot form in her stomach. Jake's voice came out shaky. "I just got an email from work. I've been terminated." Emily's hands trembled. "Me too. Effective immediately." No explanation. The table went silent. Patricia's face went pale. "Both of you? At the same time? That doesn't make sense." Jessica's phone started ringing. The screen showed HR, Anderson Real Estate. Her heart pounded as she answered. "Hello, Ms. Anderson," came the polite but firm voice. "This is Human Resources calling. I'm sorry to inform you that your employment as Client Relations Manager has been terminated, effective immediately. You'll receive an email with details shortly." Jessica's throat went dry. "Terminated? There must be some mistake. I need to speak to David, Mr. Richards. He'll clear this up. I'm afraid Mr. Richards is currently unavailable." This decision came from executive level. "Please check your company email for full details." The line went dead. Jessica stared at her phone like it had betrayed her. Around the table, her family sat in stunned silence. The Christmas lights that had seemed so bright last night now looked dim and hollow. Robert's voice came out rough, confused. "What the hell is happening?" Patricia looked at her declined credit cards, at her children's shocked faces, at Jessica's pale expression. "Someone's doing this. Someone's targeting us." Jessica's mind raced. The timing was too perfect. Too coordinated. Cards blocked. Jobs lost. All in one morning. She remembered Michael's words as he left last night. "I hope your new life treats you exactly the way you treated me." No, it couldn't be. Michael was nobody. Just a construction worker. He didn't have this kind of power. But then why was her heart pounding? Why did she suddenly feel cold all over? Jake slammed his hand on the table. "This is insane. We need to call someone. A lawyer. Someone who can fix this." Emily was already crying. "I have bills to pay. Rent. How am I supposed to?" "Everyone calm down," Robert commanded, but his voice shook. "There has to be an explanation." Jessica stood up slowly, her legs feeling weak. "I need to go see David. He'll know what to do. He has connections. He can fix this." She grabbed her coat and rushed out the door, leaving her family sitting in confused silence. As she drove through Chicago streets toward David's apartment, her hands gripped the steering wheel so tight her knuckles turned white. Her mind kept replaying last night over and over. The laughter. The cheers. The look on Michael's face as he walked away. That strange, quiet smile. What had they done? Jessica pulled up to David Richards' luxury apartment building downtown. The place screamed money. All glass and steel, with a doorman in a fancy uniform and marble floors that echoed with every step. She practically ran through the lobby to the elevator, her heart hammering in her chest. When the doors opened on the 15th floor, David was already standing there in his designer robe, holding a glass of expensive bourbon. "Jessica," he said smoothly. "What's wrong?" She rushed to him, words tumbling out in a panic. "David, everything's falling apart. My parents' credit cards got shut off this morning. My brother and sister both got fired from their jobs. And then," her voice cracked, "they fired me too. They said it came from executive level." David's confident smile faltered for just a second. "Executive level? That's strange." "Strange?" Jessica's voice rose. David, you said nobody could touch us. You're the general manager. You said we'd be together, that you'd take care of everything. He set down his drink and rubbed his temples. Look, something weird's going on. I got a notice this morning, too. The board's doing some kind of audit, reviewing my accounts and transactions. Jessica felt the ground shift under her feet. An audit? What does that mean? It means. He paused, and for the first time she saw something in his eyes she'd never seen before, fear. It means someone higher up is looking into things. But don't worry. I have friends on the board. Connections. This will blow over. But who could be higher than you? She asked desperately. You run the whole company. David turned away, staring out the window at the Chicago skyline. These corporate types move money around like chess pieces. Could be investors. Could be some restructuring thing. It's probably nothing. But even as he said it, his jaw was tight. His hands were shaking slightly. Jessica sank onto his couch, suddenly exhausted. This all started right after. After what? She looked up at him. After I divorced Michael. David laughed, but it sounded forced. Your ex-husband? The construction worker? Come on, Jessica. What could he possibly have to do with any of this? She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that the timing was just coincidence. But deep in her gut, something whispered that she'd made a terrible mistake. By Monday morning, the news broke. Jessica woke up on David's couch to the sound of his TV blaring. Morning news. She blinked awake, groggy and confused, when she heard the words that made her blood run cold. Breaking news this morning. David Richards, general manager of Anderson Real Estate Group, has been arrested following a company audit that revealed over $2 million in misappropriated client funds. Jessica sat up so fast her head spun. On the screen, footage showed David being led out of the building in handcuffs, his face pale, cameras flashing like lightning. Her phone started exploding with calls. Her mother. Her father. Jake. Emily. Notifications flooding her screen. She answered her mother's call with shaking hands. Jessica. Patricia's voice was frantic. Turn on the news. Your boss, David. They arrested him for stealing money. I know, Jessica whispered. I'm watching it right now. How could you not know he was a criminal? You were dating him. Mom, I didn't know anything about this. Well, it doesn't matter now, Patricia said, her voice breaking. Your father and I went to the bank this morning. They said our accounts are under investigation. Something about the source of funds being questionable. We can't access any of our money, Jessica. We can't pay our mortgage. Jessica's world tilted. What? Jake and Emily are both struggling. No jobs, bills piling up. And now this? It's like someone is systematically destroying our entire family. Someone. That word hung in the air like smoke. Jessica's mind flashed back to Michael's calm face as he signed those divorce papers. The way he'd looked at her, not with anger, but with something else. Something final. I have to go, she told her mother and hung up. She grabbed her coat and drove. Not to her parents' house. Not to David's apartment. She drove to the house she used to share with Michael. The house looked the same from the outside. Same porch light. Same blue shutters. Same little garden she'd planted 3 years ago. She parked and sat in the car for a long moment, trying to steady her breathing. Then she got out and walked to the front door. She still had her key. She unlocked the door and stepped inside. The air smelled like cedar and coffee. Michael's scent. Everything was neat and organized, just like always. His shoes lined up by the door. His jacket hanging perfectly on the hook. She walked through the house like a ghost visiting her own past. In the kitchen, the divorce papers sat on the table, signed and ready to be filed. Next to them was an empty whiskey glass. On the counter, she noticed something she'd never seen before, a stack of folders. Curious, she opened the top one. Inside were bank statements. But not from any bank she recognized. Bennett Industries. Millions of dollars moving in and out. Investments. Holdings. Properties. Her hands trembled as she opened another folder. Credit card statements. The same cards her parents had been using. The ones that got shut off. The account holder name at the top, Michael Bennett. Another folder. Employment records from Bennett Industries. Jake's name. Emily's name. Both hired 5 years ago, right after they graduated college. Notation in the margin. Special placement MB approval. Jessica's legs gave out. She sank into a chair, folders scattering across the table. Michael had given her family everything. The credit cards. The jobs. Her father's hospital bills. There was a record of payment. $250,000. Paid in full by Michael Bennett. Every miracle her family had celebrated over the past 5 years. Every lucky break, every blessing, every time they thanked God for providing. It had all come from him. From the man they called a loser. The man they laughed at on Christmas. Jessica put her head in her hands and started to cry. Real tears this time. Not tears of anger or frustration, but tears of realization. Of regret. Of understanding exactly what she'd thrown away. She did everything. A man who loved her so much he quietly supported her entire family without ever asking for credit or recognition. A man who chose to live simply not because he was poor, but because he wanted to be loved for who he was. And she'd mocked him. Called him a loser. Divorced him in front of everyone. Her phone buzzed. A notification. News alert. Anderson Real Estate Group under investigation. Ties to embezzlement scandal. Several employees suspended pending review. The company Michael owned. The company she'd worked for. The company where David had been arrested. Michael had built everything. And now he was taking it all back. Jessica sat alone in the empty house, surrounded by the evidence of her own blindness, and finally understood. She hadn't just lost a husband. She'd lost the only person who had ever really loved her. 2 weeks later, the courthouse in downtown Chicago buzzed with quiet activity. Lawyers walked past with briefcases. Couples sat on benches, some holding hands, some sitting apart with walls between them. Jessica Anderson sat in the hallway outside courtroom 4B, wearing a simple black dress. No makeup could hide the dark circles under her eyes. She'd lost weight. Her hands shook slightly as she clutched her purse. Across the hall, Michael Bennett sat with his attorney. He wore a plain gray suit, nothing fancy. His face was calm, unreadable. He didn't look at her. When their names were called, they walked into the courtroom together, but miles apart. The judge was an older woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She looked over the papers on her desk, and then at both of them. "This is a divorce hearing for Michael and Jessica Bennett," she said. "I've reviewed the filings. Mrs. Bennett, you initiated the divorce proceedings, is that correct?" "Yes, Your Honor," Jessica said quietly. "And Mr. Bennett, you're not contesting any of the terms?" Michael's voice was steady. "No, Your Honor. I wish her well in her future." The judge nodded. "Very well. Since both parties are in agreement and all paperwork is in order, I hereby grant the divorce. You are both free to move forward with your separate lives." The gavel came down with a sharp crack that echoed through the courtroom. It was done. Jessica felt something break inside her chest. Final. Permanent. Over. They walked out of the courtroom into the hallway. Jessica wanted to say something. Anything. But Michael was already heading toward the exit. Then she heard it. The sound of car engines outside. Smooth. Expensive. Powerful. Through the courthouse windows, she saw them. 3 black SUVs and a Rolls-Royce Phantom, all gleaming in the winter sunlight. Doors opened. Men in expensive suits stepped out. Jessica recognized some of them. Executives she'd seen at company events. People who'd always been polite but distant. Her brother Jake grabbed her arm. "Isn't that Mr. Collins?" "From Bennett Industries." Emily pointed. "And that's Mr. Foster from Anderson Real Estate Group." Their parents stood frozen, watching the scene unfold like a movie. The executives walked straight to Michael, their movements respectful, almost reverent. The lead man, Mr. Collins, extended his hand. "Congratulations on your freedom, sir." Michael shook it with a small smile. "Thank you, George." That word, sir, hit the hallway like thunder. Jessica took a step forward, her heart pounding. "Michael?" He turned to look at her. Those same eyes she'd looked into 1,000 times. But now they were different. Distant. "Done. You're..." She couldn't even finish the sentence. "You're their boss?" Michael looked at the men in suits, then back at her. "Yes. Bennett Industries," she whispered. "That's yours. It was my father's. Now it's mine." Her mother spoke up, voice shaking. "And Anderson Real Estate Group?" "I bought it 2 years ago," Michael said calmly. "Through a private acquisition." The numbers started clicking in Jessica's head. The credit cards. The jobs. The hospital bills. The company she worked for. Everything. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked, tears streaming down her face. "All these years, why did you hide it?" Michael's expression didn't change. "Because I needed to know if someone could love me without the money. I needed to know what real love looked like." "And," she whispered, "now I know." His voice was quiet but firm. "Real love doesn't call you a loser in front of your family. Real love doesn't celebrate your pain. Real love doesn't trade you in for a better model the second one comes along. Jessica's legs felt weak. Michael, please. I made a mistake. I was stupid, I was blind, I didn't understand. You understood perfectly, he interrupted gently. You understood that you wanted more. More money, more status, more things. You just didn't understand where it all came from. He gestured toward her family. Every blessing your family received, the credit cards, the jobs, your father's hospital bills that miraculously got paid, that was all me, Jessica. Every single one. Her father, Robert, stepped forward, his face pale. The hospital bills? That was you. Yes. The credit cards? Yes. Patricia's voice was barely a whisper. Why would you do all that and never say anything? Michael looked at her for a long moment. Because that's what you do for family. You take care of them. No credit needed. The word family hung in the air like an accusation. Jessica reached out to him, desperate. Please, Michael. I know I don't deserve it, but give me one more chance. I'll be different. I'll be better. I understand now. Michael studied her face. For just a second, she thought she saw something soften in his eyes. But then it was gone. You had your chances, Jessica. Every day we were married was a chance. Every time I came home with dirty hands from work, that was a chance to love me anyway. Every time your family looked down on me, that was a chance to stand up for me. His voice stayed calm, but the words cut deep. You burned all those chances when it cost you nothing to be kind. Now that you know the truth, you want back in. But that's not love. That's regret. It is love, she cried. I do love you. You love what I have, he corrected quietly. There's a difference. The executives by the car shifted uncomfortably, pretending not to listen. But everyone in that courthouse hallway heard every word. Jessica was fully crying now, mascara running down her face. What about forgiveness? What about second chances? Isn't that what love is supposed to do? Michael was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer, almost sad. I forgave you the moment you hurt me, Jessica. Forgiveness isn't the problem. Trust is. And you broke something that can't be fixed with apologies. He turned toward the car. George opened the door for him. Michael, please. Jessica called out one last time. He paused, hand on the car door, and looked back at her. I really did love you, he said. The real you. The waitress who worked double shifts and smiled through exhaustion. The woman who said she wanted a simple life. That's who I married. His eyes held hers for one final moment. But that woman doesn't exist anymore. Maybe she never did. Either way, I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for. He got into the Rolls-Royce. The door closed with a soft, final click. Jessica collapsed onto the courthouse steps, her whole body shaking with sobs. Her family stood around her, helpless and silent. Cameras clicked from reporters who'd gathered for the spectacle. The convoy of cars pulled away smoothly, disappearing into Chicago traffic. And just like that, he was gone. 3 months later, Jessica sat in a small coffee shop, the same diner where she used to work years ago. She'd taken a job there again. No more fancy office. No more designer clothes. Just her, an apron, and tables to wait. Her family was rebuilding slowly. Jake and Emily found new jobs, nothing glamorous but honest work. Her parents downsized to a smaller house and learned to live within their means. David Richards was in prison, serving 5 years for embezzlement. And Michael? Jessica saw him occasionally in the news. Billionaire philanthropist Michael Bennett donates $10 million to Children's Hospital. Bennett Industries creates 500 new jobs in Chicago. He'd moved on, built new things, helped new people. She wondered sometimes if he ever thought about her. Probably not. One afternoon, an older woman sat down at Jessica's table. She ordered coffee and smiled warmly. As Jessica poured the coffee, the woman said, "You look like someone who's learned something important." Jessica paused, surprised. "What makes you say that?" The woman stirred her coffee thoughtfully. "Your eyes. They're different. Sadder maybe, but wiser." Jessica sat down for just a moment, even though she wasn't supposed to. "I learned that some people come into your life as blessings, and you don't realize it until they're gone." The woman nodded knowingly. "And did you tell them?" "Before they left." Jessica's eyes filled with tears. "I tried, but by then it was too late. I'd already shown them who I really was when it mattered most." The woman patted her hand gently. "Then that's your answer, dear. Sometimes the lesson isn't about getting them back. It's about becoming someone worthy of that kind of love next time." Jessica wiped her eyes and stood up. What if there is no next time? The older woman smiled sadly. Then you live with it. You carry that lesson forward. You treat the next person better. You recognize a blessing when you see it. She paused. That's called growing up. After her shift ended, Jessica walked through downtown Chicago. The winter had turned to spring. Flowers were blooming in the park. People walked past, holding hands, laughing, living their lives. She passed the building where she used to work. Anderson Real Estate Group had new owners now. New name on the sign. Everything changed. She kept walking until she found herself outside Michael's old house. Their old house. Someone else lived there now. A young couple with a baby. She could see them through the window, the mother holding the child, the father making dinner. A happy family. Jessica smiled through her tears. That could have been her life. Should have been her life. But she'd thrown it away for something shinier. Something that turned out to be nothing at all. She pulled out her phone and typed a message she'd written and deleted 100 times. Michael, I know you'll probably never read this. And I know I don't deserve your forgiveness or your time. But I need you to know something. You were right about everything. You deserve better than what I gave you. You deserve someone who saw your worth without needing a price tag attached to it. I'm sorry I wasn't that person. I hope wherever you are, whoever you're with, they see you the way you deserve to be seen all along. Thank you for everything you did for me and my family. We never deserved your kindness, but you gave it anyway. That's who you are. I'm sorry I couldn't see it sooner. I hope you're happy. Really, truly happy. You deserve that more than anyone I've ever known. She stared at the message for a long time. Then, instead of sending it, she deleted it. Some words need to be said. But some words need to be kept as reminders. Reminders of lessons learned too late. Jessica put her phone away and started walking home. The sun was setting over Chicago, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Beautiful. Bittersweet. She'd lost everything. Her marriage, her pride. Her illusions about who she was. But in losing it all, she'd found something too. A mirror. And in that mirror, she finally saw herself clearly. Not the victim. Not the wronged wife. But the person who chose cruelty over kindness. Status over substance. Appearance over truth. That's the person she had to live with now. And maybe, just maybe, that was the punishment that fit the crime. 5 years later, Jessica still worked at the diner. She'd become the manager. Nothing glamorous, but honest work that she took pride in. Her family had rebuilt their lives on their own merit. Jake worked in accounting. Emily became a teacher. Her parents retired to a small town, living simply and happily. They never talked about that Christmas. The day everything fell apart. It sat in their memories like a scar, healed, but never quite forgotten. Jessica never remarried. She dated occasionally, but nothing serious. Part of her wondered if she was punishing herself. Another part knew she just hadn't found anyone who measured up. Not to money or status, but to quiet strength, to unconditional kindness, to love that gave without keeping score. One afternoon, a man came into the diner. Dark hair, kind eyes, expensive suit, but worn like it didn't matter. He sat at the counter and ordered coffee. Anything else? Jessica asked with her professional smile. He looked up at her, really looked, and something in his expression seemed familiar. Not the face, but the way he saw her. You look like someone who understands what matters, he said gently. Jessica paused, surprised. What makes you say that? Your eyes, he said. They're kind but careful. Like you've learned something important about people. She poured his coffee slowly. I learned that the best people are usually the ones you overlook. The ones who don't need to announce how special they are. He smiled. That's wise. Hard-earned wisdom, she said softly. He nodded, understanding in his eyes. The best kind. They talked for a while. His name was James. He worked in finance but volunteered at homeless shelters on weekends. He drove a regular car. Wore regular clothes when he wasn't at work. Lived simply. When he asked for her number, she almost said no. Almost told him she wasn't ready. That she was broken in ways he couldn't fix. But then she remembered the older woman's words from years ago. Become someone worthy of that kind of love next time. Maybe this was next time. Okay, she said, writing her number on a napkin. But I should tell you something first. What's that? I'm not interested in impressive things. Or status. Or showing off. I've learned those things don't mean anything. James smiled warmly. Good. Because neither am I. He left that day, and Jessica watched him go with something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not hope that she'd found another Michael. You can't replace people. but hoped that maybe she'd finally become the person who deserved that kind of love. The person who could recognize it, cherish it, protect it, the kind of person she should have been all along. And Michael? He was somewhere across the city, sitting in a boardroom, making decisions that would help thousands of people. Or maybe he was in a homeless shelter, serving food anonymously. Or walking through a park, enjoying the simple beauty of spring. He'd moved on, built a life of purpose and meaning, found peace in who he was, with or without someone to share it with. He rarely thought about Jessica anymore. Not with anger, not with regret, just as a chapter that taught him something important. You can't make someone see your worth. They either do or they don't. And the ones who don't, you let them go. Not with cruelty, not with revenge that haunts you afterward, but with quiet dignity, with the knowledge that you deserve someone who sees you clearly and loves you anyway. That's the real ending. Not the one where the person who hurt you comes crawling back, but the one where you realize you're complete without them, where you understand that your worth isn't determined by who appreciates it, and where you finally walk away knowing you did everything right, even when they did everything wrong. That's the ending Michael got. And maybe, just maybe, it's the ending Jessica finally earned too. The end. So let me ask you, friend, have you ever overlooked someone who was quietly giving you everything? Have you ever realized too late what you had? And if you got a second chance, what would you do differently? Sometimes the people we call ordinary are actually extraordinary. We just need to open our eyes before it's too late. Don't wait for a wake-up call to appreciate the blessings standing right in front of you.